We now return to It's Supernatural.
Sid Roth here with Mary Jo, affectionately called Ma Jo by her family, Pennington, and her 4-year-old granddaughter should have died. Fell straight onto concrete, but she didn't really fall. She was like carried down by angels. She saw the angels. Her grandfather, who's an engineer, said it is humanly impossible for her not to have hurt herself and to have fallen and turned in midair the way she turned unless there was some supernatural help. And then she went to heaven and she talked about seeing little boys and little girls. Tell me about that.
Yes, she saw 8 boys and 8 girls, and these children ranged in age from around 4 years old to 10 years old. And some of these children had been aborted, squeezed out before they could live. But one little boy, we found out in an unusual way. We were putting flowers by my mother's grave about 2 weeks after she fell. And she had to find the grave of a little boy. She just had to. It was urgent for her to find his grave. And
didn't you kind of wonder why a 4-year-old is looking for a grave of someone?
Yes. Her mother walked all over this huge cemetery looking for it. And the only way she found him, she finally mentioned that we wanted to leave and come back another day. And she said, but the tent will be gone. And apparently she had observed the tent from another place and knew from the tent how to get to where the grave was. And so they started looking at all the tents.
Observe the tent from another place.
She saw it from heaven.
That's what I thought you were saying. Okay, go ahead.
Michael showed it to her from heaven. And
Michael? Who's Michael?
One of the 8 boys and 8 girls.
Okay.
And this is the little boy she's looking for, and she when they finally looked around and they saw a tent over beyond my mother's grave and about 90 feet. And so they drove back around and she walked up to that, turned her back to the tent and looked out across the cemetery as though getting her bearings and walked straight to this little boy's grave. And she said to her mother, "What does that say?" And she said, "Honey, it's a little boy. His name is Michael." She said, "This is it." And she saw him in heaven. And she said, "Why do we need to find his grave?" And she said, "Because there's another one." And she later revealed to us that he was killed in a crash. She told us how the crash happened. It was in the newspaper exactly as she told it to us. Except she told us that the car was forced off the road by a big monster truck with lump tires. And then it hit a cement thing, and then it went through the air, turned upside down, and landed at a tree. Well, the newspaper did not give the account of the monster truck because that person left the scene. But the car actually had been stopped by a cop and had been left. And after it left the cop, this was all in the newspaper.
Could someone have read that article to her and she just made that up?
No, Bubba, her brother, Patrick, went back the next day to the cemetery and got the name off of the marker, yes, and went to his school and looked it up on the internet, and the newspaper clippings were there, and he printed them and brought them to us, and we were just astonished, because the first thing our mother said, ask her what color the car was. And we did, and she said it was red. She said, ask her if it landed upside down or right side up. She said upside down. So that's when she told me all about how the wreck happened. And I was telling it back to Sandy, and Sandy was saying, man, I've got goosebumps. This is so unreal. It's just exactly like it is in the paper.
Now, what did she mean there's another one?
Well, there were some custody battles after that. The little boy had lived with his father, but he was visiting his mother when her boyfriend wrecked the car, and they were both killed, the man and the little boy. And the little boy wanted his sister to stay with his father, actually. He wanted her not to have to go with the mother anymore.
Now, how did you know all of these facts?
They're in the newspaper.
So
he told,
there's really no explanation for Victoria to have all this information.
no, none at all.
Except to prove to you that there's something way beyond.
Yes.
Look, I don't, you know what, if you didn't even have those facts, I don't see how a 4-year-old could imagine what you're telling
Not at all.
me, even if you didn't have that verification.
We have never been able to find the little boy, his parents.
Did the little boy tell her anything else about the situation?
Yes, he said that he had been mean to kids at school, and that when the accident happened, he had a stick through his throat and he couldn't speak very well, but he was trying to say, God forgive me for being mean to the kids at school. So as young as he was, and he was only 4.5 when he died, he knew his heart needed to turn to God. Even as he knew he was dying, he asked God to forgive him for being mean to kids at school. Not that he would have gone to heaven anyway, but he knew his heart had to turn to God at that moment.
Now,
And then the angels took him on up to heaven.
You told me something else that was interesting, that by your swimming pool, people report seeing angels now?
Yes. There is a lifeguard angel that's at the diving board all the time now. He's very large. Sometimes I can see him pretty clearly. I can see like breastplate, little brown like chest breastplate on him. I have seen him very well, but other people can too. When you step out our glass sliding door and look toward the glass sliding door, the sliding board, you can see like a mist in the shape of an angel that you can see through it, but you can clearly see him. And what happens is the bars on the sliding board will reflect in his body. You can see them reflect several times up in his body, and there's no reason for them to reflect. There's nothing to reflect there.
Well, I also understand that your granddaughter, Victoria, goes to heaven often.
Yes, she does. In fact, she said when she doesn't go to heaven, heaven comes down to her.
What does she mean by that?
She can often just look up and she can see God and Jesus just right there.
You do realize that what you're telling me is very hard for a lot of our viewers to believe. I bet it was hard for you. What convinced you?
I did. A lot of times I have doubt, but I'm always convinced, because there's no way she would know what she knows. She's a very normal child. When I ask her what she does when she goes out to play, if she can always look up and see God there, she says she just doesn't look up. She has to keep her head where she can't see him so she can just be normal and play, because a lot of times all she has to do is glance up and see Jesus or God. And I tell her, don't go out close to the road. I don't want you outside by yourself. She said, I'm never by myself. Jesus is always with me.
You know what I loved in the book about when she sat in God's lap? I don't know about you, but I would like to sit in God's lap.
Yes. Well, she had seen God at the baby place and Jesus and her family, but when Jesus and her at the end started to the throne room by themselves to go and tell God bye because she was going to come back, well, Jesus wanted her to stay. But when she entered the throne room, she was afraid of the living creatures. She saw things with lots of eyes, and they made lots of noise, and they scared her. But once they got past that, then God motioned to her to come to him, and she ran to him, and he allowed her to climb up his leg and across his lap into his lap. And she...
Now, these living creatures are described in the Bible in the throne room. How was her description compared to the Bible description?
Well, she now calls them the four faces, but at first she said, when she was very small, she was only 5, when she said, they have lots of faces on their face. And she said they have lots of wings, they have lots of eyes on them, and their legs go down straight, and they don't have toes like us.
How could she have known this? How could a 4-year-old have known anything like this? You know, Mary Jo, if you just open your Bible and you turn to Ezekiel, the 1st chapter, and you read this 4-year-old's account of what happened in her book, It's just like the Bible. She even talks about seeing the lion with the whiskers,
And the
but she
eagle.
sees something in heaven that there is no way she could have known that happened to Mary Jo, many years ago, which revolutionized Mary Jo's life.